Meet Zafira, a barista in Aceh. Nana, a motor taxi driver in Jakarta. And Herman, a teacher in Ambon. They are all young people facing the same challenge in Indonesia, and we're going to talk about it. Yup, this is all about the money and how young people are coping with the cost of living.
Apa kabarnya? Akhirnya kita ketemu Erwin dari ABC News di Melbourne.
Zafira has been working as a barista for 5 years in this coffee shop in Banda Aceh, but it's not really her dream job.
Kalau misalnya mau nyari yang sesuai passion banget sih susah gitu, karena rata-rata tuh kalau pekerjaan di Aceh tuh aku lihatnya itu lebih ke ASN.
And this is not the only place she works.
Wow, she got 4 different jobs. Apa aja 4-nya ini?
Aku itu model juga,
Modeling?
lebih ke brand model ya.
Wow, catwalk atau apa?
No, foto model.
Iya.
Ya. Terus aku juga jadi art director, dan yang terakhir itu aku udah kerja di satu perusahaan kopi, dan itu jadi bagian dari HR-nya lah untuk cabang Aceh.
The minimum wage in Aceh is less than 3.5 million Indonesian rupiah per month. With the income from all her jobs, Zaf says she earns more than that, just over 5 million. But after spending to support her family, there's almost nothing left to save.
Mungkin nggak kamu akan punya rumah satu hari nanti?
Mungkin, why not?
Mahal banget kan sih?
Tapi iya, jujur sih sekarang tuh harga rumah tuh udah tinggi. Udah sangat tinggi malahan dibanding dulu-dulu gitu. I mean untuk rumah di pinggiran itu sekitaran 200 juta, dan itu di pinggir kota, iya, itu di pinggiran kota.
In Jakarta, the monthly minimum wage is 5 million rupiah. But the average cost of living is 3 times that amount. While it's an imperfect figure, reflecting the spending habits of rich and poor, wealth inequality is a problem in Indonesia. Nana has turned to the gig economy to make ends meet in the capital. She started as a motorbike taxi driver after getting laid off when COVID hit.
Sekarang mah pekerjaan apa aja halal deh kak, apapun dilakuin kak. Kalau ini kita fleksibel, jadi aku pagi tuh bisa ngurus anak-anakku dulu.
Kan mungkin kalau yang cewek lebih nyaman dengan cewek.
Iya, cuman kalau saya namanya rezeki ya kak, mau cewek mau cowok ya udah kan pakai aplikasi, jadi kita aman. Memang sih pernah selama 4 tahun ini sekali aku ngalamin maksudnya kurang ajar gitu.
While the job works for Nana,
Boleh kak?
how does she cope financially?
Ini kalau tadi kayak kerja sampai 12 jam, kemudian pelanggan yang ditarget 20. Kalau boleh tahu jadi pendapatannya itu dalam sebulan lah bisa dapat berapa nih kisarannya?
Paling kurang lebih itu, aku jadi malu nih, nggak apa-apa nih mau aja. Kurang lebih sekitar 6-7. Itu kalau kita rajin ya kondisinya. Kalau kita males-malesan, pilih-pilih orderan ya nggak bakalan dapat segitu.
Nana's take-home pay is higher than the minimum wage. But to get ahead, she has to make sacrifices.
Tapi tadi juga diceritain kalau misalnya Mbak ini hebat loh. Dia ini sangat punya anggaran yang ketat gitu ya.
Iya.
Finansialnya diatur. Jadi kalau bensin itu harus berapa nih?
30.000.
30.000?
Nggak boleh lebih.
Nggak boleh lebih.
Nggak boleh lebih. Makan 20.000, nggak boleh lebih.
Terus kemudian apa lagi nih yang dibatasin? Buat kebutuhan anak ada kebutuhan sehari yang dibatasin. Berapa biasanya anak dikasih jajannya?
Itu untuk sekitar 30-40.000.
Itu nggak boleh lebih juga
Nggak
buat
boleh lebih.
anak. Oh.
Pokoknya itu nggak boleh lebih dari anggaran, harus sih udah di itu gitu. Pokoknya saya sehari itu harus 100.000 sampai 150.000 itu harus uang mati.
In Indonesia, teachers are tanpa tanda jasa or heroes without capes. But are they rewarded?
Hello, good morning. Good morning, sir. Okay, how are you?
To find out, I met Herman, a high school teacher in Ambon.
Oh, ini dia, Bapak Henry.
Halo, Pak.
Apa kabarnya? Berapa sih pendapatan guru kalau di Kota Ambon kisarannya buat Anda?
Kalau di Ambon kan sesuai UMR-nya, Pak.
Iya.
UMR itu 2.700.000, mohon maaf harus disampaikan.
It's lower than Aceh and Jakarta, but Herman has managed to start building a home for his family.
Juga Anda punya nggak sih mimpi-mimpi finansial dan apakah bisa terpenuhi dengan menjadi seorang guru?
Kalau financial goal saya ya nggak muluk-muluk ya Bang, yang penting punya rumah, punya kendaraan, yang belum rumah sementara dalam proses.
Anda rumah
masih tinggal sama mantu.
Herman says he only buys what he needs and puts off what he wants until later.
Tapi bersyukur sejauh ini segala sesuatu yang menjadi kebutuhan terpenuhi. Bahkan kalau mau cerita, saya ini guru di sini dari masih belum menikah, masih lajang, sampai menikah, punya anak, dan puji Tuhan masih terpenuhi sampai sekarang.
Kelihatan nggak sih? Ayo kelihatan sini lagi, deket lagi.
When it comes to choosing a new president, higher wages and housing affordability are two things young Indonesians hope will be addressed.
Aneh ya, yang lebih mudah gitu, yang lebih gampang untuk diakses gitu. Terus juga yang kedua itu adalah ngomong support Gen Z, support anak muda itu nggak cuma di kampanye aja. Ini yang beneran disupport dong, kita beneran butuh support gitu. Terus apalagi kalau misalnya di Aceh ya.
Apa nih harapannya kalau dari kakak sendiri sebagai seorang perempuan, sebagai seorang ibu yang bekerja, kemudian juga bekerja sebagai driver. Apa sih yang menjadi harapan atau yang dilihat untuk nanti dipilih nih buat presiden itu?
Ya, harapannya ya bikinlah masyarakatnya jadi lebih makmur.
Outgoing President Joko Widodo wants to supercharge the Indonesian economy, taking it from 16 largest in the world to top 5 by 2045. For anyone trying to make a buck, there's no question Indonesia's marketplaces are moving online. Every day, thousands of vendors hype their products virtually to a growing captive audience. In the world's second largest TikTok market, Indonesians flock to its commercial offering, TikTok Shop, when it launched in 2021.
TikTok Shop live shopping balik lagi!
But in October, it was abruptly banned.
Selamat malam pemirsa, TikTok Shop akhirnya dilarang beroperasi di Indonesia.
The government arguing the platform threatened the profitability of local offline sellers who help keep the economy afloat. Authorities are now attempting a delicate regulatory balance between the old and the new, as e-commerce giants like Shopee and Tokopedia and now social media battle for a stake in the lucrative Indonesian market. So I'm heading to Social Bread. The startup, which hires streamers out to local businesses, has blown up since it was founded 4 years ago.
Can you hear that? It's so noisy in here. It's just so busy with people trying to sell stuff online. Apa kabar?
This is founder Edozel.
Social media influencers dan CEO dari Social Bread.
Kak Edo boleh bawa kami tur?
Oh boleh.
Iya boleh. Iya.
He started Social Bread to share his knowledge with other small businesses at an affordable price.
Terus kita mikir gimana caranya supaya bisa murah ya. Oh ya udah kita bikin seperti ini, semuanya sharing. Jadi costnya bareng-bareng, akhirnya bisa terjangkau buat mereka.
Walking around this den of digital commerce, there were young streamers everywhere I turned. And I was interested to learn most were selling on behalf of much older clients.
Dan kebanyakan memang notabene gaptek lah. Either gaptek atau memang nggak punya waktu untuk belajar hal yang baru. Karena kan berubah terus. Kalau dulu Instagram masih gampang. Foto-foto, upload jadi postingan. Sekarang kalau di TikTok harus syuting, ngedit, masukin lagu, transisi, masukin filter. Waduh, pala pusing pasti. Gitu. Jadi memang kebanyakan justru UMKM-nya bukan anak muda justru.
Wow, ini ada tempat tidur Kak?
Iya, ini green screen jadi bisa diubah jadi rumah mewah, jadi apartemen, atau jadi kamar mayat terserah.
Edozel might be upbeat on camera, but this business has had a bumpy ride. The venture, which was streaming for TikTok Shop, was thrown into chaos by the government's October ban.
Ada 16 streamers kita yang kehilangan pekerjaan, ya betul, di hari H itu. Tapi puji Tuhan dengan kerja kerasnya teman-teman juga kita berhasil merangkul platform-platform lain. Akhirnya di akhir bulan pun semuanya dapat pekerjaan kembali.
Interestingly, Edo is not opposed to the ban, saying without the avalanche of international sellers on TikTok Shop, his clients stand to gain business on more locally focused platforms.
Selama memang tujuannya mendukung UMKM dan brand lokal, kita 100% pasti dukung.
Edo has his eye on the big picture, but I wanted to hear from smaller solo traders who are navigating these new market realities. I'm headed to Bandung, a few hours from Jakarta, and a place with more Gen Zs than anywhere else in the country. We're on our way to see Wendy Faisal, a young entrepreneur in Bandung. We're meeting at his home and factory warehouse, where his family's made knitwear for 13 years.
Kak Wendy? Halo, salam kenal Kak. Saya Natasha.
After training as an engineer, Wendy joined the business just before COVID hit and was forced to start selling online.
Sampai profitnya sampai tidak terduga ya?
Ya, sampai tidak terduga. Pada saat itu emang lagi booming-boomingnya kita dari harian itu paling masuk belasan juta, bisa up nyampe ratusan juta gitu Kak. Kita nggak ngeluarin modal tinggi tentunya untuk tempat. Yang kedua, kita nggak ekstra tenaga ekstra untuk buka toko. Hanya kita sambil rebahan juga bisa berjualan. Yang keempat, jangkauannya luas Kak. Bisa ke seluruh negara.
At the moment we're at Tanah Abang, which is one of the oldest market in Jakarta, and we're going to take a look how online shopping has affected all the sellers here and what they're doing to get the customers back into their shops. Di sini Australia.
Australia ya?
Ya.
Berdesak-desakan orang mungkin susah masuk. Tapi kalau sekarang bisa main bola. Kalau pemerintah yang main serius itu benahi pasar, ajak kembali orang-orang ke pasar. Online shop ya sedikit-sedikit memang dikurangi, tidak apa-apa. Online shop ya bukan saja yang tadi ditutup, mungkin yang lain-lain juga. Kalau sempat ini berlangsung, saya rasa 5 bulan atau bahkan 1 tahun ke depan, dagang di sini udah nggak ada.
Pak, sudah pernah coba online?
Udah coba, tapi yang namanya rezeki kan nggak bisa katanya di online harus bisa berjalan. Karena saya dari dulu dagang, ya aku lebih cocok buka begini.
Harapannya untuk pemimpin berikutnya tahun 2024 mudah-mudahan memikirkan pedagang kecil di Tanah Abang.
Presidential candidate Anies Baswedan has been working on his image.
Selamat malam orang-orang yang tidak memilih saya.
Trying to present himself as friendly and fair when earlier in his career, his election as Jakarta governor was controversial. In the lead up to the vote in 2017, Anies was accused of identity politics, staying silent when Muslim groups attacked his rival Basuki Cahayapurnama. The protests against the man known as Ahok called for a blasphemy trial after the Chinese-Indonesian Christian governor mentioned a Quranic verse about Muslims being prohibited from choosing leaders who are not Muslims. Ahok was eventually sentenced to 2 years in jail. Anies emerged victorious, and 7 years later, he's on the campaign trail once again in the 2024 elections. He says he's a leader for everyone, but some are not convinced.
Golongan tua di gereja saya nanya, kenapa lu pilih Anies? Dia kan intoleran dan sebagainya, jadi cap itu masih ada. cap itu masih ada, jangan menutup mata. Jadi pendekatannya seperti apa?
Ika Idris is a researcher at Monash University in Jakarta.
Jaring-jaring kepercayaan di masyarakat gitu ya, itu yang akhirnya terkoyak sebenarnya dari 2017. Tapi kita jangan lupa, itu kan sebenarnya strategi untuk menang. Dan voters di mana-mana, bukan cuma di Indonesia ya, di Amerika gitu ya, di Inggris gitu, dan di banyak negara. Itu kan sebenarnya ketika mereka votes, itu berdasarkan identitinya. Gitu ya, kalau di sini kebetulan karena memang kita Muslim, identitinya adalah identity Islam itu.
But, according to Ika, what sets Anies apart in this presidential race is his detailed vision and mission.
It's really different when you read the visi misi dokumen dari Prabowo sama Ganjar. Apakah dia sangat percaya diri? Kalau menurut saya ya, karena itu kan ada dokumen, kalau nanti dia terpilih, itu sewaktu-waktu bisa digunakan untuk menagih janji-janjinya.
But Anies still has work to do if he's to become president.
Itu brand dia udah nempel ya, ketika dia misalnya jago ngomong, dia di forum-forum internasional. Nah, PR dia sekarang tuh meyakinkan gimana sih agar orang-orang melihat dia nggak no action talk only.
While some voters might be suspicious of Anies, describing him as intolerant and out of touch.
Wakanda no more, Indonesia forever.
Others have embraced the former Jakarta governor, giving him a K-pop makeover. But are these viral TikToks enough? It seems like Pak Anies might need some help.
Masalah berikutnya ini gimana cara matiinnya.
Good morning, Pak Anies. Akhirnya ketemu lagi. I got the opportunity to meet Anies Baswedan at his residence in Jakarta. I asked him how he can convince potential voters with minority backgrounds like me.
I will ask them to look at my record in Jakarta. I was labeled based on assumption, based on campaign, and then I served in Jakarta for 5 years. And after I served in Jakarta for 5 years, you have solid evidence to judge whether I am biased, whether I am fair, whether I am leaders that reach everyone or exclude some group. You know, when I started my job in Jakarta, after the elections, of course, supporter of my opponent was still against me, but no policy whatsoever is excluding these communities. And in fact, we are reaching out to everyone on equal basis and not trying to win their hearts by having more program to them and less program to others. Nope, it's equal opportunity.
He rejected claims his campaign policies and programs are too good to be true.
And when you said, Pak Anies, Indonesia is big, you have
it's not
big ideas,
Jakarta,
it's
yeah.
not like Jakarta,
yeah.
Is it doable? Okay, and my answer is, yes, it's doable, but we have to do it in a different way. Because we were not organized in terms of policy guidelines, and that's the kind of change we'd like to propose.
Anies is also against the development of Indonesia's new capital city, putting him at odds with President Joko Widodo and other candidates who have committed 40.6 trillion rupiahs in this year's budget on the move to Kalimantan.
So we have urgent and important issues lining up, needs money. At the same time, we allocated large number of money to build a presidential palace. This is a question. As a nation, if you have limited amount of money, would you rather see the bureaucrats and the presidents and the cabinets work in the same place and use this money to improve welfare of people? Or you rather use this money so that the presidents, the ministers, the bureaucrats have a new office?
100. Maka dari itu tolong Pak Anies dijelaskan
It's not just my questions Anies is happy to answer. On the campaign trail, he's been holding his own town halls, listening to the concerns of voters and answering questions from skeptics who fear he can't deliver.
Bung Dery, terima kasih Bung Dery. Jadi kita tadi pertanyaan, jangan banyak janji. Saya ingin komentari dulu soal jangan banyak janji. Sebenarnya bagi masyarakat hari ini jangan melarang untuk punya banyak janji. Tapi bilang begini, silahkan ada janji yang banyak. Kami akan catat janjimu dan kami akan tagih janjimu. Gitu.
Terdakwa Haris Azhar tidak terbukti secara sah dan meyakinkan bersalah melakukan tindak pidana.
Human rights activist Haris Azhar and Fathia Maulidianti know how lucky they are. In January, they were cleared of defaming one of the country's most senior politicians after a draining legal battle. The pair were sued by Coordinating Minister for Maritime Affairs and Investment Luhut Binsar Panjaitan after they discussed his alleged connection to mining and military operations in Papua online. I met up with Haris just weeks before the verdict. As we traveled together to one of his many court dates, he shared his concern about the state of free speech in Indonesia.
Menurut Anda nih, apa sih yang terjadi sekarang pada Anda dan Fathia?
Represi ya, terhadap partisipasi publik. Jadi ya tekanan-tekanan serangan terhadap peran warga, partisipasi publik dan juga serangan terhadap CSO, Civil Society Organizations. Gitu. Politik yang dijalani oleh penguasa hari ini adalah politik yang monopolistik ya. Nggak boleh ada kritik, nggak boleh ada oposisi. Nah, semua orang-orang yang mengkritik kan dipidanakan.
Haris is concerned the situation is leading to fear and censorship.
Kita mundur ya, regress atau setback ya, mundur ke titik otoritarian itu.
25 years ago, Indonesians rose up against President Suharto and toppled his dictatorship.
All last week, students tried to march on Parliament, met head-on by troops.
It was a turning point for the country and ushered in a new era of free expression and democracy.
Before Suharto stepped down, we didn't know that we had such power in our hands. Now we do.
But in recent years, that power has faded as the Jokowi government passed a series of laws that effectively silence dissent. It's not only outspoken activists who have been targeted. Comedians are in the crosshairs too. Bintang Emon has millions of followers online where he pokes fun at Indonesia's political class and highlights social issues. It's a risky job. In 2020, he became the victim of a digital smear campaign, and he knows the punishment for speaking candidly could even lead to jail time.
Salah satu yang paling aman saat ini ya main satir aja, itu kan sama sekali nggak bisa ditangkap ya. Kalau saya kebetulan ya jadi tahu caranya, sementara kan orang sekitar nggak tahu, sehingga kebagian paniknya aja. Mama tuh kayak, bisa nggak sih nggak usah gitu-gituan, kayak kan mama umpetin HP kamu ya.
Bintang takes precautions to ensure his content can't be easily manipulated.
Konten saya kan umumnya ada di 1 menit 2 menit ya, si outputnya. Itu bikinnya tuh biasanya di 2 hari, 3 hari, 4 hari. Jadi itu saya benar-benar bikinnya tuh kata per kata. Jadi satu kalimat tuh saya masih mikirin, ini gimana ya biar nggak bisa dipotong. Biar kalau dipotong tuh nggak nyambung.
Writer and academic Oki Madasari researches censorship in Indonesia, and she believes it's having a real impact on the quality of democracy. One of her biggest concerns is the erosion of space for public debate.
Iya, jadi public space di Indonesia itu menghadapi 3 aktor yang membuat kita masih harus struggle untuk mewujudkan itu. Pertama, negara dengan segala institusinya, termasuk dengan undang-undang. Kedua adalah masyarakat itu sendiri lewat kelompok-kelompok beragama, kelompok-kelompok ultranasionalis. Lalu yang ketiga soal kapital. Jadi kelompok-kelompok yang memang merasa punya uang, yang akhirnya bisa menggiring, menentukan mana yang boleh dimunculkan, mana yang harus di-silence.
While the internet was supposed to democratize expression, Oki Madasari argues powerful vested interests are getting a say in what content is promoted.
Masalah-masalah dalam kehidupan sosial media itu, misalnya nomor 1, soal algoritma. Seolah-olah itu bukan urusan pemerintah atau bukan urusan authority gitu kan, tapi jelas bahwa algoritma itu digiring oleh mereka yang punya kapital kan. Dan ini tentu akhirnya mempengaruhi informasi macam apa yang akan dikonsumsi oleh publik.
She's worried about the presence of so-called buzzers, online political campaigners who often promote paying candidates in the lead up to an election.
Buzzer seolah-olah natural aja, dia user internet loh, jangan salah juga. Mereka juga dikontrol oleh orang yang memesan informasi. Apa yang disampaikan itu akan membentuk juga apa yang dikonsumsi publik. Mereka ini kan bisa berlaku sangat kasar, sangat menakutkan, mengeroyok orang. Nah akhirnya kita, orang-orang yang tidak punya gerombolan, orang-orang yang hanya ingin menggunakan sosial media untuk mengekspresikan suara dan kritik kita, takut bersuara.
While some find themselves silenced, others are making a tidy profit. This former journalist worked as a social media buzzer during Indonesia's 2014 and 2019 presidential elections. He agreed to an interview on the condition of anonymity.
Kami melihat itu murni bisnis. Meskipun kami tidak terlalu suka calon tertentu, tapi sepanjang itu bagi kami adalah opportunity atau peluang bisnis, kami akan mengerjakannya. Biasanya kita punya semacam barisan untuk konten kreator. Kita juga punya graphic designer, video editor, dan alur kerjanya adalah saya sebagai pengendali itu menentukan tema-tema spesifik tertentu untuk diubah oleh konten kreator menjadi berbagai macam bentuk meme, konten, dan berbagai macam media sosial. Dan angkanya itu lumayan waktu itu.
Berapa itu lumayan?
Lebih dari 100 kalau sekedar operasional gitu. Belum termasuk gaji ya.
Sama berapa lama?
Waktu itu 6 bulan.
For Robert and his colleagues, it's life-changing money. But it doesn't compare to the price Indonesians are paying for the loss of their free speech.